Plus, Ghana's mobile money industry experiences significant resurgence following the repeal of e-levy. Alright, this hour, I'm Kemeni Amano, and this is News Central. The news starts now. This afternoon, a failed attempt to arrest the NPP's Ashanti Regional Chairman, Bernard Enchibwesiako, also known as Chairman Wontumi, a team from National Security who besieged his Parakua state residence were met with a fierce resistance from his supporters. We are learning the arrest attempt was made in the early hours of today when armed operatives surrounded the home of Wontumi, curtailing his movement out of the residence. This failed attempt comes barely a month after the Financial Intelligence Center froze his bank accounts and that of his company, Akonta Mines. Now, environmental CSOs have been formally lodged a complaint with the police CID for the arrest of Chairman Wontumi over accusations of undertaking illegal mining activities in the Tano Forest Reserve. It is unclear at this time whether this move is linked to any of these cases. Here's a report by William Evansinkum.
The motive is not clear, but they have been moving around while the chairman remained stuck in his house. We still do not know the motive for which they came here. But the moment they arrived, scores of party supporters also came, spent about 20 minutes, and then they left. They had wanted to fly a drone, but that drone, we cannot independently confirm whether it was shot down. But they complained that the drone was tampered with, and they had to leave. They left without laying a hand on the chairman of the MPP here in the Ashanti region. The supporters of the party are still here, and they are bent on remaining here until they are convinced that the chairman of the MPP is safe. So we will be speaking to lawyer Kwame Adumapia very soon for him to tell us what led to this particular invasion. Of course, I mean, the operative of national security, they are not speaking to us. They've left, as I said early on, but we will be engaging lawyer Kwame Adumapia to let us know whether there has been some level of communication between chairman and then national operative. Know why the operative from national security were here?
I asked from the leader of the team, and he told me that they've been asked to bring him to Accra, and we were able to resolve the issue. So later on in the following week, we will make sure that he responds to their invitation.
Do we know why they are inviting him?
We are not aware of that. We are not aware of the reason. They never told us. You know, when a constabulary duty is to be done, the policeman's lot is not the best. You are asked to bring the person. That is what they were told.
Not too long ago, the issue of Akonta mining came up, and we know a couple of people around him were invited. Do we know whether it has to do with that?
It is a sin for a lawyer to conjecture. A lawyer goes by the actual facts. I cannot conjecture that, or I cannot speculate that it was because of ABCD that he was being invited. But if it was, which I deny, if it was in relation to a Akonta mining issue, then the mode of arrest is bad.
Very much. So we have been speaking to lawyer Kwame Adumapia, counsel for Bernard Enchibwesiako. Of course, the Ashanti Regional Secretary of the Opposition NPP. William Evansinkum, back to your studios.
Indeed, and in a bit, William will join us for a bit more. But what you just saw is the end of that failed attempt to arrest the NPP's Ashanti Regional Chairman, Bernard Enchi-Bwesiakon, also known as Chairman Wontumi. It would appear that the national security operatives who surrounded his home in the wee hours of Friday were met with resistance from party supporters and friends of Chairman Wontumi. Let's find the latest on this. Let's get the latest on this situation. William Evans Inkum is our correspondent who brought in this story. William, what is happening now around this situation around Chairman Wontumi at his residence?
All right, so Kevin, we still have, people, or if you like, supporters of the opposition PP still trooping to the house of the current regional chairman of the party, just to offer some level of support. Some of them heavily built men, and they tell me that they are going to remain there until they are satisfied that Wontumi is totally secured as far as his protection within his residence is concerned. But I can also tell you that Wontumi is currently at home and he is receiving some level of internal protection now.
Is he at home at will, or he is under some sort of house arrest?
Well, for now, you cannot describe it to be an house arrest. Early on, maybe to some extent, because that is how some of the supporters were seeing it. A number of operatives from the national security, heavily armed, besieged the house, and to some of the supporters, it was more or less like an house arrest because he wasn't taken. Maybe because there was some level of resistance. But now all of them have moved out. We still do not know whether they'll be coming back for him. But like we heard his counsel, tell us that on Monday, they are ready to go to Accra and then meet the national security because they've been invited.
What was the nature of resistance that the security operatives met at the residence of Chairman Wontumi in a bid to pick him up from his home?
Well, you can only describe it as fierce. And at a point in time, there was some level of exchange. A drone that I saw in an attempt to fly over the house or the residence of Wontumi came down. I cannot say for a fact that it was shot down, but it came down. And that also almost aggravated situation. But who has prevailed? The regional secretary of the party, and then the leader of the team that came to Wontumi's house, they had some level of dialogue, and then they left the place.
Evans, we're looking at the video. Was this an exercise of two men? How many people from national security besieged the home today?
Well, a number of them. I will not be able to place the figure to it. I also will not be able to say that it was closer, but in between. A number of them, over 10. And then I also saw some police men or men in police uniform also joining the national security. I will not be, like I said, I will not be able to place a specific figure to it or number to it, but they were many.
Indeed. Sniffing around this issue, a few things I want to learn from what you have been able to gather. Is this exercise likely to repeat itself? Are we going to see, how we link this situation to the incidents of cases against Chairman Wontumi?
Today, I'm not pretty sure, but Monday, if he fails to honor the promise made to the national security, maybe I wouldn't be surprised to see a spectacle like what we saw not too long ago. And again, I cannot say that I'm getting that particular information from the national security, but from their pusher, it looks like that's okay. Rest assured that we are bringing him on Monday, as communicated to us by his counsel, and of course the regional secretary of the party, Adoma Pia Esquire. We just probably would have to wait and see whether they will honor that promise, and if they fail to honor that promise, what is likely to be, the scene as far as his residence is concerned. Maybe we just have to wait. But from the position, I wouldn't be surprised that if that promise is not honored, maybe we are going to see a spectacle like we just saw.
Evans, we'll keep an eye on the story. Thank you so much for talking to us. Evans Inkum is our Ashanti region correspondent who's just been giving us the latest on that arrest attempt on Chairman Wontumi, the Ashanti regional chairman of the NPP. But we'll stick with the NPP because we know another member of the party, Alfred Adenta Kumi, popularly known as Adenta Kumi, has been picked up by security operatives. This follows his release of some videos involving some judges in an alleged meeting at a restaurant in Accra. Now, you recall that Alfred Kumi has petitioned the president to examine the conduct of some Supreme Court justices because of its implications for the ongoing inquiry around the suspension or removal of the Chief Justice. Now, that's what you're seeing on your screen at the moment is the video of that moment when the arrest of Adenta Kumi took place. You can see that from this amateur video, the security operatives had gone to the area. There was a bit of an exchange with the civilians who were there. But finally, at the end of it all, we know that Adenta Kumi was picked up. That's what we are hearing as far as this incident is concerned. So there you have it, NIB on those vests they are wearing, indicating that they are operatives of the national security. But the question now is, how did we get to this point? And that's where we want to take you to, because Adenta Kumi had petitioned President John Dramani Mahama, asking him to dissolve the committee of inquiry set up to investigate the alleged misconduct of the Chief Justice, the now suspended Chief Justice. In that petition, Adenta Kumi alleges that in the evening of 15th May 2025, between 7:30 and 8:30 p.m., Justices Gabriel Puama and Samuel Kwame Adibu Esiedu, together with Justice Yoni Kolendi of the Supreme Court of Ghana, were seen having dinner with the counsel for one of the petitioners before the committee, Tadia Sori, at the Santoku restaurant located at Villaggio Airport Residential Area, Accra. Now, that is the allegation Adenta Kumi made. He goes on to say in that petition that the strange meeting of the four persons who are keenly interested in and have played and indeed continue to play critical roles initiated in the process for the removal of the Chief Justice excited the curiosity of some persons at the restaurant, and they were overheard discussing matters relating to the petition. Respectfully, the record of the presence of the four justices, Puaman, Kulendi, Esiedu, and lawyer Tadia Sori, Adenta Kumi continues, says that it can have or can easily be verified and confirmed. Now, let's focus on that, because we also know that verification of that situation, videos of that situation were released yesterday. And in that video, what we see, if we could show that video briefly so that we can go over how we got to this point. In that video, which Adenta Kumi is, is indicating that he's very worried about because it could affect the proceedings for the removal of the Chief Justice of the Republic of Ghana. According to him, such a solemn and serious process should not lend itself to manipulation by any person or authority. I did want to show you that video. Unfortunately, I cannot show you at the moment, but a few things just to clear. As to be ethically done as a journalist, we know that Tadia Sori has denied any meeting of such. Now, subsequently, videos have been released showing Thaddeus, persons believed to be Thaddeus Sori and the other judges named in that petition. For a brief moment, two of them were already seated. Three of them walked into this restaurant. They finally identified each other. And then, and that's what you see on the screens at the moment, you see three of them walking. They go past the reception area of the restaurant. Then they go past two people sitting at the center of the restaurant. Now, these two people, one of them is believed to be lawyer Tadia Sori, and you can see they almost nearly go past the two people sitting there. But then the last gentleman there recognizes one of the people seated and exchanges pleasantries with them. So for a brief moment, that happens. The gentleman will then, as if to say, these people are also here. They go to exchange pleasantries with them as well. Also a very brief exercise. And then that's where the video ends. We don't know anything else from that. Now, the question is whether or not within that brief moment of exchanging pleasantries, an issue as critical as this one, the removal of the now suspended Chief Justice, could have been discussed during those exchange of pleasantries. Look at that. You see Thaddeus Sorry returning, or the person believed to be Thaddeus Sorry, almost returning back to his seat. He comes back to his seat. And again, I ask the question whether or not within that brief moment, a discussion of this nature could have taken place. But let's have a conversation on the back of this. Fraud and security consultant Richard Kumado, once an operative of the NIB, is joining us for a bit more on this. Richard, I appreciate you talking to us, but look at these arrests. We are seeing the pickup of Adenta Kumi and then the attempted arrest on Chairman Wontumi. What readings are you making into these moves being taken by the NIB?
Definitely, if it is confirmed that the NIB has arrested our brother known as Adenta Kumi, then he and his lawyer and family members would have been told by now the reasons for his arrest. You can look at the approach, you can look at the practices of the NIB or the officers from the National Security Secretariat. But I have made this point on your platform severally, that once arrest has become an option on the table, and they walk in there and they pick you up with or without arrest warrant, you would have been informed why you have been picked. So that is with the Adenta Kumi. When it comes to Chairman Wontumi, we are yet to confirm whether he was actually in the house or not after the time they got there, and why they were there really, whether they wanted to search his house or they want to get him arrested. In a democracy where the NID or the officers from the Secretariat are aware that the outcome of their actions can be subjected to scrutiny or can become illegal, it is always important they act in a manner that succumbs to procedure. So that is where we are.
You see, the kind of resistance also, when you look at the situation with the attempted arrest on Chairman Wontumi, that also portends a lot of worry, especially when we see civilians, so to speak, or members of the public in such exchanges with national security. Is there justification for that?
To some extent, that is what I was saying, that they are aware that their actions and the outcome of their operations, whether a search or an arrest or somebody who has come to an investigation notice, and they are aware that the outcome of their job could be subjected to a probe or litigation or public scrutiny. In that regard, they will need to act in a manner that conforms to procedure. I'm very surprised to see they got to the entrances of Chairman Wotumi's house, and if the idea is to arrest him, then I don't think anything will prevent them from entering the house. And if they are there to search his house, I also neither do not think anything should stop them from searching the house. These stand-up confrontations we are seeing is setting the stage and is setting the precedent that should be very detrimental to both sides, and we are getting there very gradually. It is something we need to look at it again and grant public education to the general public. When you obstruct officers, of law enforcement officers on assignment, there are consequences for that. That again, then the conduct of the law enforcement officers themselves would need to be looked at it again, because it's becoming a major issue for them since January, and I think they have to look at it again.
Indeed, could the NIB have taken a different move? For instance, invite Adenta Kumi, invite Chairman Wontumi. Couldn't that have been a better process to avoid any confrontation of this nature at this time?
No, that is one option. They also have the right to arrest. Is that dictating to the police or any law enforcement agency how to do their work. They have the power to arrest. They have the power to search. They have the power to invite. that is at the discretion of whoever is leading the operation. But once arrest become an option and you get in there, surveillance has been done. The dots have come from the field. You have crossed the T's and dotted the I's, and you are very determined what you want to do. Indiscretion and lack of circumspection can create operational security for the people around and for the officers involved. And I think that is an area they need to look at it again. And once people begin to scrutinize what they do, then they know that the cameras are at their back and they must act appropriately. Even though we have seen situations where people come to challenge law enforcement officers on duty, that is a very major indictment. And many of those guys who are challenging law enforcement officers on a legitimate operation, they could also get arrested because it's a crime in our criminal code.
Do you worry that this could be interpreted as a move to silence dissenting voices like that of Adenta Kumi?
Yeah, to the extent that you have the NDC, NPP angles coming in, you know the way they play in this country already, and that is the unproductive aspect of NDC, NPP politics in this country. But I believe that nobody is above the law, and once you breach the law, we need to have the motivation to punish people or to warn people and to deter them from breaking the law. Recording people without their notice, social media tendencies, creating blackmailing, and create all manner of problems for everybody. I think we need to look at it as a nation. But then again, it is NDC, NPP politics full of misrepresentation and misconception and misinformation and disinformation. And that is the danger that faces the state as a national security interest in this country. And it is something we need to look at, Chairman.
I see. We'll leave it here. Thank you so much, Richard, for talking to us. Richard Kumado is a fraud and security consultant, a one-time national security operative as well. We'll turn attention to other stories, but, to do with the courts, because on Tuesday, April 22nd, Ghanaians were informed of Chief Justice Gertrude Araba Isaba Tokonu's suspension following numerous hints by leading members of the NDC on social media. Spokesperson to the President and Minister for Government Communications, Felix Kwachiofosu, in a statement announced that a prima facie case had been established in respect of 3 petitions calling for the removal of the CJ, and a subsequent committee set up to look into the allegations. Lord Edwasari assesses changes that have occurred at the judiciary since the directive.
Hours after the suspension of Gertrude Saki Tokonu as Chief Justice, Justice Paul Bafo-Boni, a Justice of the Supreme Court, was appointed Acting Chief Justice in accordance with Article 1446 of the 1992 Constitution, which mandates that the most senior Justice of the Supreme Court shall act in the role of Chief Justice when the position is vacant or when the incumbent is unable to perform their duties. As his first move as Acting Chief Justice, Paul Bafo-Boni instructed that all newly filed cases be forwarded to him for assignment and scheduling. A circular signed by the Deputy Judicial Secretary indicated that the Acting Chief Justice would assign courts and empanel judges for all the newly filed cases and applications. The directive has since received backlash from the Ghana Bar Association, with the latter issuing a statement calling for the revocation of the order. The acting CJ also directed Dr. Serakus Baninye Bapuro, the Deputy Judicial Secretary, to assume the position of the Interim Judicial Secretary, subject to the eventual decision by the Judicial Council. The memo from Justice Bafo-Boni followed the resignation of Justice Seka Pamela Karanting from the role. Hearing of the injunctions against the suspension of Chief Justice Gertrude Tokonu was chaired by the Acting Chief Justice Paul Bafo-Boni. On May 6, the Supreme Court resumed hearing the injunction application seeking to halt the suspension of Chief Justice Gertrude Tokonu. Justice Bafo-Boni empaneled new judges, with him presiding over the matter. A former Attorney General, Godfrey Dame, who was the lawyer for the plaintiff, objected and asked the acting CJ to recuse himself, citing that he stood to gain from the result. The objection was eventually overruled and dismissed. The acting Chief Justice has since empaneled himself in subsequent constitutional matters heard at the Apex Court. Administratively, some judicial service staff have also been reassigned to other departments. Lord Idwasari, TV3 News, Accra.
Now, MP for Old Tafo, Vincent Asifua, has petitioned the International Labour Organization against what he describes as political discrimination and unfair dismissal in the public sector. He says the action violates Ghanaian and international labour standards and called on ILO to address the injustices to ensure fair recruitment practices for all. Before we bring you excerpts of the petition, let's recall some soundbite from the government spokesperson explaining why government gave the order.
Process began. We noticed these speedy, hurriedly arranged, often highly irregular recruitments into various public agencies. We raised the issue. Indeed, on the very first day of the joint transition meeting, we raised the issue. And you recall that after the meeting, I addressed the media and pointed out that we have this serious concern about the manner in which these appointments are made. We had asked for some dialogue and engagement between our side and the outgoing government side to have an understanding of what exactly is happening. We said that they should at least hold on pending some consultation on the matter. They rebuffed it and said that they had the power to do so. And you recall that on 17 December 2024, I issued a statement on behalf of the NDC side of the transition team and indicated that given the frustration we had faced from government, we were going to be left with no option than to reverse those decisions pending further inquiry and any other actions that may be taken going forward. So it's not like this has come as a surprise to anybody. We were very clear on our position on the matter. And there is precedent. The MPP took a similar position in the past. You recall that when they came to power, some nurses whose recruitment had begun long before the elections, their recruitments were put on hold for several months, if not a year or so. This will be placed on record that the government of Ghana, the one led by President Mahama, has no difficulty with any specific individual. It doesn't matter whether you are MPP or NDC. And we believe that MPP members, just like NDC members or any other group of Ghanaians, deserve the same opportunities to serve once there are vacancies in the public and civil service. But there must be fairness in the way that this is done.
Oh, Felix Kwache Ofosu there. He is Minister for Government Communication, explaining why that decision had to be taken. But we know the Old Tafo MP has now petitioned the ILO, as I've told you already. Let's take a look at some of the things he put in that petition. He says targeted termination of civil and public servants, including contract staff perceived to be affiliated with the NPP, lack of due process and dismissals, including the absence of hearings or formal reviews, replacement of dismissed staff with partisan loyalists without transparent recruitment processes, and violation of the political neutrality expected within Ghana's public service under the Labour Act 2003, Act 651, and civil service regulations. He also goes on to request from the ILO an independent inquiry into the recent wave of dismissals in Ghana's public sector and issuance of a public statement addressing these developments and calling for an immediate halt to politically motivated terminations. He also wants an engagement with Ghanaian authorities in dialogue under the framework of Convention 111 and relevant ILO principles, provision of technical support and guidance to help restore politically neutral, merit-based recruitment systems within the public sector. And a few others. But these are the key things in that petition to the ILO. I will stay on this subject because Minister of Labour, Jobs and Employment has described as unfair an attempt by the Member of Parliament, Vincent Asifwa, to petition the ILO about public sector dismissals. The minister said the government recruited 12,000 people illegally, and so it was proper that the new government dismissed all those people. Dr. Rashid Pelpo spoke exclusively with our Labour Affairs correspondent, Daniel Opoku.
Between the time they lost elections and when they handed over, they employed 12,000 people into the public service. Many of them without ever going through an interview, without ever being advertised, the jobs never being advertised. They just call people and give them appointment letters. Let me also disclose to you that the ILO has appointed me as the co-chairman in the Fair Recruitment Initiative by the ILO itself. And a key aspect of recruiting people is through fair means, is by merits, and is by circumstances within the framework of the law. Now, all these have been violated in the last MPP regime in how people were engaged. We are not stretching the thing to the extent that many people who were illegally engaged this way are affected. Our concern is about those that have been illegally engaged without passing through due process. Atamils came and said he was father of all. He didn't even, including MCEs, DCEs, he didn't dismiss them. He kept them in office for 6 months. He kept everybody in place. I said, look, he's a father of all. We should find a way to stop this thing that President Kufuor started by dismissing people. He kept it, and we worked with everybody. When Nanado came into office, everybody, including junior workers, were all dismissed. I don't know why he couldn't see that. Why is he hiding that and just talking about now? He started the trend. They started a trend, and it is working to affect them. But we are not even stretching it the way they stretch it.
Rashid Pelpo responding to that petition to the ILO about some dismissals in the public sector. More on that story in subsequent broadcasts. Right now, however, we'll take a very fast break, but up ahead on News Central. More of that story when we come back. Health Authority, there is no cause for alarm. The 4 new confirmed cases we gathered are not related. 2 were confirmed from the Western region and the other 2 from the Greater Accra region. Earlier, there were 3 cases recorded in the Accra Metro, with 2 more recorded in the Western region. We can also confirm contact tracing is still ongoing, while those traced are currently being monitored. Surveillance remains heightened at the Regional Health Directorate as Ghana Health Service reactivates response protocols, including contact tracing, to prevent further transmission. Dr. Dennis Lai is the Deputy Director of Disease Surveillance at the Ghana Health Service and joins us via Zoom for a bit more on the story. Doc, good afternoon. I do want us to talk about the number of cases we are seeing. That at last check, it was 9. Has that changed?
Well, good afternoon to you, and thank you for the opportunity given the Ghana Health Service to engage all of us on the outbreak on hand. So yes, we have 9 confirmed cases, and I have to say this is from for the whole of 2025. In the recent few days or last few weeks, we've had 8 confirmed cases, for which 2 regions are currently affected, the Greater Accra and the Western regions. There are 4 cases that we recorded recently in our last update are from the Greater Accra and the Western region, 1 from Greater Accra and 3 from the Western region. I think in your introduction, you mentioned 2 from Greater Accra. It's actually 1 from Greater Accra and 3 from the Western region. Thank you.
Now, how did we identify these cases?
So we have a surveillance system in place, and it's let me put it this way. If it's like having a security system in your house where you are always on the lookout. So the fact that a criminal or somebody who intends to steal hasn't come to your premise doesn't mean that the system is not working. And so we have a surveillance system that is looking for some of these diseases that we call priority public health diseases, some of which are likely to occur in outbreaks. And so the surveillance system basically works to find these diseases before they get out of hand. And so we have been investigating cases or suspected cases of Mpox. And as of the 21st of January, we had investigated over 100 of such cases. And it's 8 or 9 of them, sorry, I should say, that have been confirmed as due to Mpox. And so that is how we work. We look for the diseases and we make sure that we have put systems in place to pick them. But of course, it's not to take away the fact that the public has a critical role to play in this. If people understand that when they have symptoms, they need to go to a health facility, and there are systems in place to make sure that we are able to get to the bottom of it, they would have some confidence and be able to go. And so engagement with you in the media such as this affords us the opportunity to remind people of this, and so people can be able to go to the health facility when they are not well.
Are we considering, vaccination as a way of preventing, Mpox?
Vaccination is not recommended routinely, and this is a global best practice. And so it usually targets very high-risk persons. So, for example, health workers who are working in places where they are likely to come into contact with persons with Mpox. It's also targeted at persons who live in households or share close proximity to persons who have Mpox. And so basically people who have high risk exposures are the ones that the recommendation is to give the Mpox vaccine.
Dennis Lai from the Ghana Health Service, thank you so much for talking to us on this subject matter. We can now turn attention to something else because you and many other Ghanaians use mobile money for financial transactions. New April data shows cross-network transactions alone soared by some 25%. Now, repeal of the electronic transfer levy, e-levy, is believed to be responsible for this significant bounce back in the use of mobile money. Now, analysts say once the nuisance tax was removed, consumers embraced again digital platforms, fueling growth in one of Ghana's most vital financial ecosystems. According to the latest summary of the economic and financial data from the central bank, the value of cross-network transactions increased by 800 million cedis to some 4 billion cedis between March and April. Now, compared to the same period last year, transactions ballooned by 1 million, a sign of renewed momentum in the sector. Now, the data also shows that registered mobile money accounts reached an all-time high of 75.2 million in April, again reflecting growing user confidence and a rapid return to digital financial services across the country. But let's show you what the growth or the trend has been since the beginning of the year. We know that between March and April of 2025, there was an 800 million cedi increase. But as of January 2025, January this year, before the repeal of the e-levy, transactions stood at 2.9 billion cedis. February, we're seeing no difference between January and February, also 2.9 billion, because again, e-levy was there. Then 3.2 billion comes up in March, because that's the period we start to see a repeal of the e-levy. And then a proper account of the impact of the e-levy is seen in April of 2025. It shoots up from 3.2 billion to 4 billion. 800 billion difference between March and April. 800 million difference. So there you have it. Many of you are returning to mobile money transactions. Transactions soaring from 3.2 billion in March to 4 billion in April, a difference of 800 million cedis in transactions, which is good for business and, it's good for you and I. But let's turn attention to our regions now. The continuous delay in paying road contractors in the country is affecting progress of construction works on some roads in the northern parts of the country. Some contractors are now threatening to abandon sites as the Roads Ministry and the Ministry of Finance are yet to honor payments. During field assessments of the 13-kilometer Banvim-Buhia Road in the Savannah region, the contractor Alhaji Samed Salifu warned most roads could be washed away with the onset of the rainy season if payments are not made in time to complete the projects. Well, there's more to this story. Christopher Mwako is our correspondent on the ground. He's joining us with a bit more. Christopher, good afternoon to you. What can you tell us about these roads?
Yes, so Kemini, if you come to the northern parts of the country, especially this time when the rainy season is about setting in and contractors are also ensuring that road contracts that have been awarded to them are catered for. Unfortunately, these contractors are having some challenges, especially when it comes to payment of their certificates or honoring their certificates by these contractors. So it has become a major concern for them, and they believe that if payments are not done on time for them to get back on site to ensure that they work on these roads, the roads may be washed away by the rains if the rains come heavily this year. Some of the contractors have also indicated that since 2024, when the contracts were awarded to them and certificates were raised, they haven't received any payments yet. And so it is slowing down the rate at which work is supposed to be done. Let's take a listen to what one of the contractors has been telling us.
Volume of water here and seeing the beautiful bridge which has been launched, I think that I would communicate with my colleagues at the top and will do everything possible to get the payments done. It's quite regrettable that upon the good work that he has done from 2013 to date, 3 certificates have been made, but none is paid. I can appreciate the challenge, and I can also appreciate the fact that contractors, per the award letters that they do, if they prepare a certificate for some number of days, if payment is not made, interest begin to pile up. That means that the accumulated interest on the 3 certificates which were prepared earlier is actually an addition to the cost to the people of Ghana, when we could have possibly paid it off for him to continue the work and beat the project duration for which he is supposed to do that. He's done well by completing 78% of the bridge, which is the phase 2 of the project, which is actually a total cost about 23 or so, 22 million thereabout. And the value of what he has done is about 18 million for what the engineers have briefed me.
Christopher, we'll leave it here. Thank you so much for talking to us. Christopher Mwako is a Savannah region correspondent. Let's turn towards the west now, because the managing director of Metro Mass Transit, Kate Caesar, has issued a warning to companies occupying their terminals to vacate them with immediate effect. Speaking during a familiarization tour of the facility at Sekunde in the western region, she also called on development partners to collaborate with them to give a facelift to the terminal. Irama Smith has more.
The Metro Mass Transit continues to face challenges with its operations in the western region, as many buses have broken down and been grounded, whilst their premises are being encroached upon by private businesses. At Takwa in the Takwa Nsoye municipality, the few buses are unable to meet the high demand for their services. The managing director, Kate Caesar, who has been on a nationwide tour of their facilities on his stop in the western region, first visited Takwa before moving to their Takrade terminal in the Sekondi Takrade metropolis, and finally to Sekondi. Giving the assurance of revamping the operations, the managing director, Kate Caesar, warned companies occupying their terminals to vacate with immediate effect.
To all those unauthorized encroachers and trespassers, that very soon we'll serve them with evacuation letter. We want to actually speak to some of the stakeholders, like the AMA and the regional minister, seek their permission, and will serve letters for all unauthorized encroachers to vacate. Because we want to rebuild and establish a proper terminal here to give a very effective and efficient services to the people of Takrade. And so we are serving notice that all those who are here operating unlawfully, we are giving them an ultimatum within 2 weeks have to vacate. Because looking at our structure, it is at a sorry state. The passengers don't deserve to sit at a place like what we are seeing. Even our officers who are operating here, our staff, don't deserve this kind of condition. You look at all the buildings that are actually, around us. They are all squatters on our land. And we want to develop a modern terminal for this particular terminal. In fact, one of our main objectives is to ensure that we reset this place by bringing in more modern buses, by bringing in more small buses that can actually operate to and fro at a faster rate. This is what many of our passengers are looking for. Metro Mass will continue to exist. Metro Mass will continue to render efficient and effective transport services to our people.
Well, Hail Caesar is in charge of Metro Mass Transit and he's very much a he. You're watching News Central. When we come back, we'll bring you more news, including that controversial meeting between the South African President Cyril Ramaphosa and American President Donald Trump. Don't go away. Welcome back. Now, that meeting between South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa and U.S. President Donald Trump has been on the front burner of global media discourse. In a mildly hot-tempered tone, President Trump ramped up unsubstantiated claims with respect to genocide and land seizure in South Africa. Trump brought out a TV screen when quizzed about his claims that bad things were happening in South Africa. President Ramaphosa was at the White House meeting with Trump over bilateral and geopolitical matters. Now, this afternoon, this is how leader of the economic freedom fighters, Julius Malema, reacted.
Who have been killed here in South Africa is not true. And there are no 49 Afrikaners who left South Africa. You all know that. It's a fiction, it's drama. You know, America with drama is #1. That thing is Movango. I don't know what is Movango in Afrikaans. It's just a drama. I believe they landed and then they waited for cameras, took them pictures, the next flight back to South Africa. If those people are farmers, it means there are 49 farms available. Why are we not expropriating them? Because they've abandoned them. But why is the media not telling us? Because they say these are farmers. Why is the media, through its own investigation, say to us, this picture you see is a farmer at this. They are not farmers. There is no one who left farming here in South Africa. I suspect that those whites were these ones who were looking after cars at the parking lot. They were attending to cars and they went to fetch them there. They can't live. They will never live the kind of life they live here in South Africa, anywhere else. Even if you live here as a millionaire and you go to USA, your money gets reduced to nothing. So no American or Afrikaner will leave South Africa for America. It's not true. Our country, there's no killing of white people. We're not killing white people. We're demanding our land. We're saying, let's share this land. Let's all work the land. And if that is a crime, it's a crime we're prepared to commit. Because we can't, when we're asking for food, and say, no, you're committing crime by asking. We're having a robust debate on land in South Africa. And that must never be used to silence us by...
Well, Julius Malema is leader of the economic freedom fighters with his view there on that meeting between presidents of South Africa and the United States of America. That'll be all this hour. There's more news on 3news.com. I'll see you at 10 p.m. on Ghana Tonight. But do join us at 7 p.m. for News 360. I'm Kemeni Amano. This is News Central.